Don Schneider is the deputy head of U.S. policy at Piper Sandler. Don, great to have you with us. You say we were likely headed to the brink, and of course you remember the 2011 debt ceiling fight, crisis, whatever you want to call it. The S&P 500 was down 15% then, and so I'm wondering if you think we're headed to that.
I think there are a lot of similarities between what is going on now and 2011. I think market participants are a bit more aware of the consequences, and we know more about what would happen in the event that Treasury had to prioritize debt payments or what would result in a technical default situation. And I do see additional risks relative to 2011. I think one is that Kevin McCarthy, who is seeking spending cuts in exchange for an increase in the limit, and with Democrats saying they will not negotiate on those terms, is, of course, one risk. Another, Kevin McCarthy owes his speakership in part to conservative members he made those concessions to. And likewise, I think Republicans in the House have said that they are beginning to consider some sort of plan to tell the Treasury what to prioritize in the event of a technical default, which I think tells you that at least a large number of members are not bluffing about taking this to the brink.
All right, so they're not bluffing. So it is different this time around, Elon, in terms of people actually digging in their heels, because, traditionally the market reaction, at least at this point in time, before extraordinary measures run out, before, tax receipts start rolling in April, for instance, which gives us a little bit more time to figure things out, is that there will be a solution of some sort, or the can will be kicked down the road to the point where the markets are comfortable with that. What's your take on why it's different this time?
Yeah, well, let's certainly hope there's a solution that comes out. I mean, I do agree with Don that one variable here that's a real risk is the fact that any one member can make a motion to vacate the speaker, meaning that Kevin McCarthy could lose his job if he makes some sort of deal with Democrats to increase the debt limit. I think what is good here, if there's one little ray of sunshine, is that what we're hearing from conservatives so far is that they're saying we will not default. They're saying that they will look to protect Medicare and Social Security, even as they say there need to be broad spending cuts, or at least a plan for broad spending cuts. So I think that conservatives are saying that there is still plenty of time to negotiate on this, that they are at least willing to sit down at the table. And they are trying to put the blame on Democrats for saying they're the ones who are sort of moving the stalemate here and saying that they're not willing to come to the table and negotiate. I think one person to pay attention to in all of this, though, is going to be Mitch McConnell. He was there for the debt ceiling fight in 2011. He tried to play hardball with Democrats back in 2021. It did not work. This time around, you're hearing a lot more compromising rhetoric from at least Senate Republicans. And so we'll see how marginalized this conservative bloc becomes during this debt ceiling debate.
So, Don, what are you telling clients in terms of what the timeline here is, and how much time there is, in fact, to negotiate when you take into consideration extraordinary measures, how much time that buys, tax receipts, corporate tax receipts in the fall? I mean, what's the actual deadline that you're thinking about at this point?
What Secretary Yellen said in her statement to Congress is that we have until early June, saying that Treasury is very comfortable with their ability to meet payments until that point, and then afterwards they're uncertain. I think a sort of market consensus, and at least my own forecast, would suggest the true drop-dead date is sometime in mid-August. I think either way, whether Secretary Yellen's guidance is correct or that is correct, it means this needs to happen before August recess. But I think the way that Secretary Yellen has phrased it is to be prudent and say, be very cautious about whether we have a recession or if there are some other factors that lead to uncertainty in the amount of cash on hand. So for that reason, she's said early June.
All right. Let's hope there's a resolution. Don and Elon, thanks so much. Don Schneider, Elon Moy.